So I've set the hobby mat MD65 up for thread cutting, and this is for 2mm pitch. So I've got 60 tooth gear, a 60 tooth gear, a 70 tooth gear, and then onto a 35 tooth gear. So if you look through that, that's a direct 1-to-1 ratio, and then there's a 2-to-1 from there onto the actual lead screw. So 1 revolution of the head moves the lead screw along 2 revolutions, so it moves 2mm, so 2mm pitch. I've removed the drive belt because I'm going to hand crank this, because it's 2mm pitch on quite a short length. There's no real room to start and stop the lathe. And it's really limited on speeds with the belt drive, so it's best to hand crank it, and I'll show you that in a second. I also remove the power to the motor because it's very tempting to switch that switch and just turn the lathe on even when you know in your head you're hand cranking it. So remove the belts, take the plug out, everything you can do to ensure that you don't start the motor up. So wind it in, and I'm going to do the cut. It's just a repeat of that cut. Back it off, out we go. Little bit of cutting oil on there. Go into, this is a new fresh cut. Very long, so it's coming along. And the second cut at that setting. Back it off. Let's just brush the excess off, and you'll start to see the thread. So you can see the thread there. I'll just wind this in for another cut. 4. Let's just put a bit of oil on that. One cut. Whoops. Probably 0.3. Sometimes you just have to get this backwards and forwards and just work out where you are again. 0.35 maybe is enough. I think it is. Yep. So maybe some smaller cuts now. We're getting a bit deeper. Back it off. Back out. And we keep repeating. So lots of cutting oil, and then I'm hand cranking the hob. So you can see I'm hand cranking the hob and the gear's going round. It's a very simple makeshift bearing, 2 pieces of brass reamed out to 6mm to take these steel, effectively a steel axle bolted each side of the brass gear. And then I just carefully, gradually wind the gear into the hobbing tool. You can hear it just cutting. Go round just over 1 revolution, and I just slightly wind it in again, and it takes the form then of the cutting tool. The squeaking is me hand cranking it. So now, after making the hobbing tool, hardening the hobbing tool, some practice parts, making a mandrel to hold the gear. I've finally made the gear, and then as you saw, I've hobbed it, so it's got a nice, it starts to fit the form of the worm rather well. And then I made a short piece of the worm in mild steel here, and then you can see that they fit together really well. You are. There's only a few turns of the worm, but it engages really well. There's very little backlash in there if I push them together well. It's going to be really good. So that so phosphor bronze gear, mild steel worm, and now I've got to make the bracket up to hold these on the side of the engine and fit the drum for the chains, and then the steering wheel shaft. So back to work on the miniature steam engine.